grant you this variance.
That's not what I heard him say at all. What I heard him say was the comp plan says you have to provide a buffer. We are
can't be zero.
requesting, right, and we're requesting that we provide a 10-foot buffer.
All right, just hang on a minute. Did you say that we cannot grant a variance in the wetland buffer?
Cannot remove the wetland buffer per the comp plan. It calls for a buffer. It does not specify the dimension.
So we can grant a variance.
From the 25-foot buffer in the land development code.
What about the comprehensive plan?
The comp plan just calls for a buffer itself. It does not give the detail on the dimension.
Yeah,
What's your opinion?
there's no numbers in the comp plan, so you can, as I believe Mr. Hall and Mr. Shonen have said, so if it was 25 and you wanted to reduce it to 23 or 20 or 10, that's allowable, but to say, no, you don't have to have a buffer at all, there will be no
Okay.
buffer, then that goes beyond what you're allowed
That
to do
clears
as
the
a board.
confusion up. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I really just wanted to impress upon the board as much as I could the importance of these wetland buffers. And it's seen through the environmental planners report as well as the EA. You know, it speaks to the importance of wetlands and floodplain, and it's just a dangerous slippery slope, if you will, when we start reducing these sort of things.
I think that wetlands are very necessary. I think that unfortunately, the subdivision was allowed to be subdivided in wetland. So where exactly do you establish wetlands when you're trying to start putting a subdivision? And then you have different opinions on different biologists or et cetera, whoever going to determine that. And, you know,
I'm looking at that retaining wall back there, very similar to a seawall on the bay, where if you only have one person build that seawall and you have wave action against that structure, you start to have erosion issues on the adjacent properties that aren't protected all on the same line. So if all of these houses have the same 25-foot setback and one person builds out into that during a flood event, which we've had several over the last 10 years, as that water comes up in that wetland area, you could undermine the retaining wall structure and cause problems for the adjacent properties next to you.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that assessment at
And
all.
I would even argue, looking at the photos, that the 10 feet of wetland that has moved is as a result of the filter that was placed to create the retaining wall and has disturbed the wetland.
The environmental assessment says as much.
Okay, so that wetland only moved because it was disturbed by the retaining wall. So even if we were to grant a variance for the 25-foot wetland setback, you still have a 15-foot rear setback that the shed is being built into. So the adjacent property now has a shed in their view opportunity out to the wetland, which is an amenity for a lot of these homes.
side or which is you
So
call
this is the rear property line. So there's a 15-foot
This is the
setback
rear.
off of this wall.
The back is
So this
within
is
7.
this in the side setback and in the rear setback, and it's not permitted, so we don't know if it has proper foundations or uplift resistance on the roof. It looks like it has the same shingles as the house next door, and so maybe the builder put that up while they were building the house next door. But I have massive concerns with the shed itself.
Yes, staff absolutely agrees with you. The site plan provided for the shed itself shows setbacks that don't actually seem to add up, as it were, with the property line when you look at the photos. But again, that wasn't part of the application. Staff didn't speak to that in its report, in my report, excuse me.
That don't make sense, Stephen.
It doesn't in a lot of ways, but if the application comes in for something, you know, maybe I should have said something in the pre-app about it, but because the site plan showed the dimensions meeting the setbacks, you know, until I got the application in and started reviewing things, I couldn't make that determination.
That don't make sense.
Did they, they didn't build the retaining wall, they bought the house as it was, thinking it was okay.
But the shed is probably more problematic. So that was added after you purchased the house.
With your property, and then when there's somebody comes in, there's violations, and I think the planning department should have the authority to say, if you want this variance, you need to ask for all three, because you can't get one unless you get all, because sooner or later it's coming up. To me, the planning department should have that authority. Now, I think they got a lot of authority I'd like to take away from them, but I definitely think they need to have that authority. What do you think, Mr. Hall? Pardon?
I think at a minimum, we should have had a survey which showed the wetlands being flagged.
The
with
point-
The shed being noted on there, because now we don't have all the information. So even if we were to grant a variance to the wetland issue that allowed them to keep the retaining wall in the wetland setback, now you have a non-permitted shed that would have to come back before us. So I think it would be best if we dealt with everything all at once. So my recommendation would be to pull it off of the agenda today, or we table it until we have all the information necessary. Because the way this is going, it doesn't look good.
My point is, the planning department should have the authority when there's a violation, comes before for another variance request, and they see on the plat that there is a violation of a structure, they should instruct that person to bring that in compliance at the same time. And it just blows my mind that, okay, go get your variance on the wetlands. Maybe you get by with this other violation, you know, in the code, you're in the setback in two sides, and we're okay with that. I mean, that don't make sense to me. To me, it's a placing a hardship on the owner of the property having to come back again and again.
Not
and
to
again.
handle it all efficiently at one
If
time.
if the planning department is going to, you know, tell people what they can and can't do with their property, then they need to say, this is a violation, you need to bring it in compliance. I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, does it or does it not?
And Mr. Chairman, to the extent that the planners have all the information they need to make that decision every time efficiently, I think that they do.
Well, I
They
disagree with
they
the
sometimes,
doc-
like they did here, discover things in the course of the,
And we've said many
review.
times in this meeting that if we don't have the adequate information with surveys that showing the issues that come before us, then we don't need to hear it. And if they're presented a package that doesn't have a survey like Jeff just said with the correct information, then we don't need to sit here and hear it.
I would
Don't
agree.
have adequate information.
I would agree that we don't have a determination as part of the package on where the wetland boundary is located.
But I also don't have the shed located on a survey either.
So the code requirements, when I review an application that's submitted, it says, you know, a boundary and topo survey within a year. It was dated November of 20. You know, I had no way to determine if the applicant or homeowner understood that they were in violation of the setback. Maybe they intended to remove it. Again, the site plan that I was provided as part of that shed application shows it compliant. So, you know, without actually going through here and really doing more than I should for the application itself, I really wouldn't have been able to make that determination. And I still don't, because I don't have a survey showing those dimensions.
Okay.
I think they're independent issues. If it would be the applicant's choice to handle them two different ways. Like if you want to pay the money and go twice, you can pay the money and go twice, but it would be to their benefit to have done it once. But then they may just say, I'm going to tear the shed down anyway, it doesn't meet the setbacks, so I'm probably going to have to tear it down. And I just want a variance for my backyard.
If I can.
Yeah.
Was not trying to hide the ball on the shed at all. The shed's never been brought up to me. This was all about the backyard and the wetland buffer. If it's the board's pleasure, we will table this and we'll come back with an appropriate survey of the wetland buffer or the wetland delineation line. And we'll deal with the shed. We'll figure out, is it too close? What's the deal with that and how to handle that? So if that's the board's wishes, that will be what
I
we
would
will
also
do.
suggest that an engineer say that it meets the code as far as uplift resistance.
You mean on the shed? Oh, yeah, architectural plans of some sort will be provided.
We need a motion for that.
But now, before we go, Jeff, just so I understand, sorry, Mr. Chick, are you saying you would want us to come to you with plans showing the shed meets those requirements now? Because that would be
Part of the
required for the
problem
building
with people
permit.
building sheds without getting a building permit is that during a storm, the roof flies off and hits the neighbor's house. And they say, "Oh, we didn't pull a permit," so nobody came out to inspect if it had threaded rod hold downs and hurricane
Right,
clips
right.
on the roof and everything else.
And that'll be taken care of when we get our building permit.
Yeah,
That's the
wouldn't
reason
that
I don't know that I need to bring that back for the next variance hearing, because if we're not going to get the variance, then,
I'll tear it down.
right,
Fair enough.
right.
So.
But we will get a building permit, assuming we get approval for this.
At this point, Steve, Mr. Tatum, are you requesting that the matter be continued so you can get the additional information at this time?
Yeah, let's continue with it next month, and maybe we'll have our survey by then. And
No objection by county staff, so we'll need a motion, Mr. Chairman,
Motion?
I'll make a motion to table this to the
or
next
just
meeting.
continue it to
Continue it.
August.
Second. Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
understanding. Item number 9, Melissa Ward and Donat Shipman.
Good evening, Chairman Board, Robert Kaufman with Dunlap and Shipman.
Mr. Kaufman, are you been practicing up on getting to the point?
I am still an attorney, Chairman, so it does take me a little bit of a wind-up, but I am here.
I don't want you to get wound up. I want you to end.
Okay. Well, we are here requesting permission rather than forgiveness, and I hope that'll be considered by the board tonight.
Right.
On behalf of the applicant, Point of View Townhouse Association, and I do have an exhibit, applicants A, to hand out.
So enter. Tell us what you're asking for us before we get too far along in this.
Sir, we are asking for a variance from the section 50403 100-foot setback for gated entrances. We're asking for a 40-foot variance to the 60-foot mark. So as a little bit of background, and what I just handed you is a project narrative which contains some more detail as far as what we believe is the satisfaction of all 7 of the variance factors in more detail than I plan to go into orally. Behind that is a report from the Walton County Sheriff's Office from Sergeant Wendell, basically a public safety report, which I'll touch on a little bit later in the presentation. The Point of View Townhomes is a 12-unit complex. It's located on the south side of 30A, down in the Seacrest area, just a little bit to the west of Watersound Parkway South. It was built in 1978. It's a community, none of the properties are currently rented. It's primarily a community of second homes. I believe there's one person, one homeowner who lives there full-time. And they are seeking to construct a gated entrance for protection both of their personal property and their real estate, as well as personal safety. The reason that they're here requesting a variance for that entrance is simply that the as-built configuration of this property, which was built in 1978, doesn't make construction of a gated entrance at 100 feet a feasible option. It would basically result in a gate that is located in the middle of the existing parking lot. It would also be basically at the rear bumper of the cars that are parked in several parking spaces serving several of the units. So what is proposed is to move that north 40 feet, and as I'll discuss, this does, we believe, provide for all the safety concerns and adequately addresses all the safety concerns that are expressed by that typical 100-foot setback requirement.
Hold on. On your photo that you provided in the package, the 40-foot, when you were saying that the 100-foot would just more or less be too close to the buildings
Yes, sir.
or the parking lot. You have the buildings, you have the cars parking, and the gate would be right at the building. And you would have to go up to the gate, turn from the building, and come down and park. That's more or less what you're saying.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming that the 40-foot variance would be at the green vegetation line that is shown on the parking lot.
It is, and
Your
there's-
60-foot gate would be at the beginning of the parking lot. Is that correct?
It is roughly, if you refer to, it's page 27 in your staff report or in the narrative that I've just handed out. It's pages 4 and 5. There's a little bit of a blown-up version of the staff report, or rather the site plan. And it's actually 120 feet of common area measured from the edge of the right-of-way to the edge of the parking lot pavement. The standard parking space is 20 feet in length. So you're at 120 feet. When you get to the end of that parking space, as I referred, basically the rear bumper of the vehicles, you're at that 100-foot mark. And so part of the discussion here is that section 50206 of the code, which is the county's parking space design requirements, in addition to having the standard 20-foot length space, it provides for a 24-foot minimum aisle width for the parking. So in other words, we'd have to go another 24 feet north with the gate to even meet that bare minimum aisle width. And also that doesn't accommodate anything such as emergency vehicles. It doesn't accommodate the site factors of this particular property. The 24 feet would still be in the middle of the parking lot. The reason you go up another 16 feet is that it does essentially fit in with the current vegetation line, fits in with a current pedestrian fence that's within the landscaping. So that is both the practical and the feasible location for installation of the gate on this property. And I'm also want to note for the record that applicant intends to rely on the staff report and all the exhibits to the staff report as evidence in support of the variance. In the staff report, page 30, you can see a photograph of the property. And this is taken essentially from the perspective of the photographer standing on that 60-foot mark looking north into 30A. And you can see the length of the drive at that location, which is very important because when we're talking about the legitimate safety principles that, as I mentioned, are behind this 100-foot setback, it's basically two things. It's making sure that you don't have stacking of vehicles into the public right-of-way, and it's making sure that there's adequate area for turnaround. Now, what we're here on you tonight, with you tonight doesn't really implicate the turnaround. This will have to be a less than minor development order. If the variance is granted at that point, we'll be able to get the architectural plans drawn up, and there is ample room to accommodate that turnaround. The Homeowners Association recognizes it'll probably require a little bit of reconfiguration of the front entrance, but the turnaround's going to be provided. That's not at issue. In terms of the stacking, part of the issue here is that, as I mentioned, this is a 12-unit complex. It's mostly second homes. Even the 60 feet allows for a stacking of 3 vehicles off of the right-of-way before you would have any concern about blockage into the right-of-way. And in fact, in this particular location, although admittedly this could change with future changes to Highway 30A, the existing southern pavement line on 30A is actually 25 feet north of the right-of-way line. So you actually have 25 feet of right-of-way that's off the current 30A. Then you have another 60 feet to the proposed gate.
Hang on a minute. Your boundary line is, what's the width, what's the right-of-way line at 30A?
Which picture are you looking at, Chairman?
What's the right-of-way of 38? Not a picture. What's the right-of-way of 38?
Oh, the width is 100 feet.
100 feet?
100 feet.
And the edge of the right-of-way, is that your boundary line?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So you're gonna go from your boundary line 60 feet.
That's correct.
Have 25 feet from your boundary line to the highway.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Your 60 feet don't include from the highway, right?
that's correct. From the edge of pavement, that's correct.
Right.
As long as we know
85,
where the boundary is.
85 from the highway, 60 from the property line.
Okay, go ahead.
With the code requirement being measured, of course, from the property line, hence the 40-foot request. One thing that I wanted to focus on, because when we look at the factors for a variance, it's not supposed to be for profit, those types of issues, is that it's a safety purpose. And the Walton County Sheriff's Office report prepared by Sergeant Wendell is the second item in the applicant's A that you now have. And this is a crime prevention through environmental design survey is what it's titled. It was prepared at the request of the Homeowners Association. There's lots of good information in here, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to focus on a couple of brief excerpts. Page 8 lists criminal cases and incidents from within the past year and within a half-mile radius of the point of view townhomes. It includes, as you would expect, a number of trespassing incidents, several vehicle burglaries, theft incidents, a couple incidents of criminal mischief, some residential burglaries, a stolen vehicle, and a little bit of violent crime as well, unfortunately. On page 10 of the report is entitled The Threats Risk Assessment, and the report states, quote, "The real threats to point of view community is the unauthorized / unwelcomed vehicle and pedestrian traffic utilizing their parking lot, tennis court, and beach access." Page 11 of the report, which is entitled Territoriality, and that's all about the community showing that it is a private community. It's not open to the general public.
My question is, you're allowed to have a gate, right?
Yes, sir.
I think everybody on the board knows that a gate would keep people from, and that's the purpose of that police report.
Yes, sir.
Well, let's go back to your gate, if you don't mind. I'm still confused about why you didn't bring your proposed gate to the green vegetation. I finally see on page 7 of your report, proposed gate is 60 feet, but you're still 20, 30 feet from your vegetation edge of your parking.
It's a little bit north of the vegetation line, that's correct. And that gets to what I was referencing earlier, the 24-foot aisle. So again, the 100-foot mark is basically what you could think of as the rear bumper of the parked vehicles as they pull head first facing the townhomes. That's the 100-foot mark is at the back of those 20-foot parking spaces.
Okay, so you say the red line at the 100-foot setback, you saying use that for a vehicle to park, right?
Yes, sir.
And if you did that, then there's 24 feet, that'd be close to your yellow line proposed gate. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. And then it's 16
That's
additional
going
feet to
through
the
the
60
gate.
foot.
So you're saying going through the gate, you need to back it up so you can park and the gate opens and not interfere with the parking.
Exactly. With a zero variance, you have to remove the parking spaces, and of course that runs into problems. If you back it up 24 feet, then you may be able to turn around on a sharp turn,
Got it.
but that would be an
I'm
issue, we
curious,
believe, for emergency vehicles.
That 100-foot stacking requirement offset from the property line seems to me appropriate for a much larger subdivision. This townhome has how many?
right, and my apologies for the interruption.
Listen, Miss, can you get by a mic for us? Thank you.
I do. You know me, I'm just a know-it-all. Melissa Ward, Dunlap and Chipman for Point of View Townhomes. In response to your question, ideally, when people ask for a gate for a community, it's in the entrance road to a community that has additional roads interior to it. So you would have enough depth to have everything that you would need there, potentially guard places and buttons and all kinds of stuff. But what we have here is an existing development from 1978 that, because it's on the Gulf of Mexico, they pushed it as close to the roadway as they could while still retaining some of their own privacy, because they had vegetated areas. If you were to drive down there, there's the tennis court that I'm going to point is here, right there. And there's some vegetation around it, and then the driveway in, and then some more vegetation, a little bit of a green area that is a part of their exterior common. And ideally, they would never put a gate up. It's become necessary. And in response, really very directly to Chairman Johnson's question, the gate is both for the purposes of being able for people to back out and move around inside the gate, but also because their tennis court is fenced here, and they have fence here nicely, adequately as well. Thank you.
So they could use the parking in the tennis court.
They would use the space that's right in front of the tennis court for turnaround purposes.
There are
Is
pictures.
everybody's pretty clear on this?
I do have a witness who's Mr. Jed Downs, a board member on the Homeowners Association. Sounds like the board is fairly clear on it, so as long as I'm allowed to call him potentially in response to staff comments, we rest at that point.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, what you think?
If I could have the staff report entered.
So entered.
Thank you. You know, there is something to be said about safety, and staff is certainly sympathetic to this development's predicament and many others along the Gulf. It is staff's understanding of the code that this does not satisfy those minimum requirements. You know, I am cognizant of the built environment issues there with actually placing it at 100 feet. You know, but there's not a requirement for a gate. Certainly, foot traffic could be mitigated by a pedestrian-style gate adjacent to the units. You know, there's other options here besides this a 60-foot or 40-foot variance in staff's opinion. But unless you have questions, that's all I have to say.
We appreciate it, Stephen. Thank you. Anyone here in opposition? Anyone here in support of? We don't want to hear from y'all. There are too many of you. Why don't y'all come up, if you're not, look, don't be repetitious. If you got something to add, come and add it. We don't want to be here all day, so come on up and say what you got to say. What?
Thank you very much, Chairman, Board. I'm Jed Downs. I'm one of the owners.
Are you the one that he wanted to speak?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Gonna allow him to speak now? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. As he said, 1978, these places were built, 43 years. We have never needed, wanted a fence or a gate. The development that has occurred clearly around us, in front of us, across 30A, there are people that are wanting a shorter route to the beach, a quick route to the beach. Curious because we're renters, we have an empty parking lot. We do not rent. We're all owners, part of our bylaws, we do not rent. Therefore, we have a large parking lot that we have one resident that lives there full time. There may be one or two cars there. That's a resident with a wife and two daughters. We have again, that empty parking lot invites people to come down there and say, we can shimmy a way through. We have a center common area, 6 here, 6 here. They will oftentimes try to get through here. Here's the scary thing. We last year had, on a weekend where we had people coming, not very many people in the parking lot, not very many people there. We had, they went checking doors, and they walked people from across the road, evidently, open the door, walk through one where children are, they walk through it, and then walk past the people on the deck once they get there and act like, that it's their place. People today, we've not called the police a lot. We run a lot of people off. We've just recently found we need to call the police to document the report. But people feel entitled, and when you approach them, they feel like you are offending them, and that they get very rude. Women oftentimes, our wives, family, daughters, oftentimes are there by themselves. There may be one other resident there, not resident, but owner. There may be two. That we have our high weekends on the holiday weekend. Most is on July the 4th. But whenever women are there, they do not feel comfortable about approaching teenage boys, oftentimes, even women or girls, but strangers, they do not feel comfortable about trying to run them off. And so, there's a lot of reasons why. We can all understand as men, but anyway, ours is not because of want, because of need, necessity for protection for our property and for protection and security for our property and our people. So I can say a lot more, but I hope you get the point in this is that it is a necessity for us. And we have struggled for several years because we like the openness, but we've got a fence. Now we're waiting for is the gate. And the gate will help secure us.
I think every board member on this board tonight understands that crime in South Walton has increased because you have more traffic and you have more crazy people. I think that there was a shooting down there just recently where they wound up in Okaloosa County. We understand, and, unfortunately, when you have a nice place, you bring more people, you have more crazy people, and you're right, you got to protect yourself. So I think, you're doing what you need to do, and it's unfortunate. It is. Especially those of us been here since the 70s and seen it change from the 70s to today.
Yeah.
I don't even go down there anymore because road rage, I probably wouldn't make it back. So.
Well, nonetheless, we consider it paradise, and we're just trying to protect it and protect ourselves.
And we're glad that y'all willing to put up a gate. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Board, thank you very much.
Is the gate manned?
Are there anyone else that has anything to add? Come up and do your closing. Come up and do your closing. Not you got something to say? Come on. What's his name? Kaufman?
Robert.
My name is Kevin Riley. I'm a resident, full-time resident of Point of View. And everything that Jed said is felt by the rest of us. But I see these things firsthand, and I have two very small children. And I feel they're at risk. There's no question they are.
Oh, there's no doubt.
They use the parking lot as a play area, and the common as a play area. And we've become a popular turnaround spot as well, and people they don't drive too carefully. They're really unaware of the fact that there's a 5-year-old child on a skateboard in that parking lot.
They don't care.
Well,
If
they're
aware,
busy.
They don't care.
They're busy. They're on a
Most
mission
of them
to have
got a
fun.
medical marijuana card now, smoking dope, driving up and down the road. Craziest thing I ever seen in my life.
Well,
That's the truth.
I can't say what's on their mind, but maybe they checked their mind at home when they left and came. And so that's what we deal with on a regular basis. I could tell you a lot of instances, but I won't drag it on.
We're good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Come up and do your closing. You don't have a card, do you?
My only closing, Chairman, is that you made the point you're allowed to have vehicle gates in South Walton and a regulation that postdates the development that prohibits the community from having a vehicular gate is a hardship, which is what the code requires in this context. So we've requested grant the variance.
Can you make the gate work at the 75 feet?
I don't believe so, because there's two issues. One is the configuration of the parking lot. It's still down into the parking lot. Well, second is it doesn't align with the existing fence that's already been erected, which part of the recommendations of the sheriff's office report was that you sync all that up so you have a unified perimeter. And also, if you're giving the very minimum 24 feet, then there's still a concern, rather the 24-foot aisle width, there's still a concern about how the emergency vehicles can maneuver in there if cars are parked in those head-on spaces.
Got it.
Motion to close the public discussion.
Motion to close.
Second.
Second.
Motion to approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve the gate at 60 feet.
Second. Discussion. Do what?
I said a thief's gonna find a way to get in, it's probably from the south side this time around there.
Charlie, you have anything to say?
Who was the second on that? Mr. Rushing? Okay.
Have a motion.
I think we're gonna see a lot more of these starting to pop up with all the development and everything else. And these older projects that predate the rule of the 100-foot setback, it's gonna cause some friction, and a lot of them aren't gonna be able to meet that, but they still have a need. And so I think 3 cars of stacking plus the additional 25 feet. Yeah, I mean, it's,
And it's not rental.
more than adequate.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Y'all received your variance. Item number 10. You done pretty good that time.
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully I don't botch this one. This is a
You
white.
won't.
Appreciate it. You've looked at what it is then. This is a White Cliffs variance. Robert Kaufman with Dunlap and Shipman here with planning consultant Melissa Ward on behalf of applicant Goutreau Investment Properties, Lisa Goutreau, owner of one of the residential lots in the White Cliffs neighborhood. I know the board is quite familiar with the White Cliffs neighborhood. This is another variance request to be permitted to build a structure that meets the White Cliffs Community Code. It does not require variance from the White Cliffs Recorded Community Architectural Code, but that does nevertheless require a variance from the county code in order to be consistent with all the prior development. The structure in question is an accessory garage. The primary residence is not seeking a variance either from the community code or the county code, but the community code provides for accessory garage structures on the driveway side for a side setback of 1 foot and a rear setback of 4 feet. The proposal here is for a side setback of 1 foot and a 4.5 foot rear setback for the garage structure, again, to be consistent with all of the other garages, accessory structures that are built in White Cliffs. There's a very extensive development history for White Cliffs that I know the board is aware of. I could certainly ask Melissa to come up here and testify to that if you would like to hear it again.
Robert?
Motion to approve.
This is something that, for those that may be on Zoom that think we just gonna rubber stamp everything that you bring before us, this is something that has been coming before us since Mark Davis was the attorney and instructed the county that you had to. On every one of them, we approved them, and the thing about it is, be nice if they would all just do this at one time and get it over with, and I don't know why we can't. I disagree with the attorneys on that. They're wrong, and I think we should. But I think the board gets it. So just have a seat, sir.
So I would
But
just,
that's hard for you to do because you love to talk.
why, actually, you'd be surprised. I'll take a seat. I would just note for the record that applicant intends to rely on all the evidence in the staff report and its attachments because they support the variance. Thank you.
Mr. Stephen, we know it doesn't meet the hardship and we understand all that. Sit down.
If I could just enter this in the record, please, and
So
then,
enter.
yes, and then I'll just get out of the way.
Now, go ahead, Stephen.
Right, staff is painfully aware of the development patterns in there and the history of variances in front of the board, and we completely understand that this is in keeping with both the intent and the current design of the neighborhood. But alas, it does not satisfy those minimum hardship requirements of the code.
We understand. Thank you. Any further discussion? Anybody here for it? Anybody here against it? Anyone has anything to say? You're done.
Motion to close public discussion.
Second.
Go ahead. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Don't mind. Before we start on the motion, I think it needs to tie to the OR booking page 1034, page 305, lot 3A. So we need a motion. Tie it to the Village of White Cliffs Building Architect Code that's recorded. We need a motion. Jack made the motion. We have a second. Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
You done good.
Watch it. Thank you.
All right, we're going back to item number 3. Is that item number 3 and item number 2? Mr. Callahan?
If staff could just take a minute to pass out 2 more items for this.
Sure.
Great.
Mr. Callahan, Buchanan. Whatever your name is, come up. I was thinking about Callahan on that John Wayne movie. What? Not John Wayne. What's he call him? Clint Eastwood. We don't even need our book, do we? Because nothing's in it.
That's your stuff.
All right, it's your showtime.
All right, my name is David Buchanan. I know it's getting late, so I'll try to keep this as simple as possible. We made a mistake. I've been building down here for a little over 15 years. When we do our foundations, we get surveys. The surveyors tell us where to put our foundations. We had a different crew doing our foundations. They pulled the survey off of, or they pulled the foundation off of a neighboring survey pinpoints, and they did not wait for our surveyors to lay the pinpoints. When it was discovered, we stopped.
Who did that?
Which company?
I mean, that was your builder that pulled off the
I'm the builder, so I'm taking the responsibility.
foundation people?
But the foundation
Pulls off
subcontractor.
somebody else's survey.
They pulled off, the neighboring lot had survey markers, pins on it, and they pulled off of that, which isn't something that's not something we do. We haven't ever done that before.
But usually the pins are consistent with the lots.
They are.
They
They're
thought it was
pretty
a boundary
close. I mean, over the years, I've only seen, usually less than a foot variance between different survey markers.
It's your testimony, you get your own survey.
Yes. We don't use somebody else's. I mean, I want the guys to, especially on a lot like this. This is a very small lot. I think it's 30 by 60. 30 by 60. So it's a pretty tight lot with, with the setbacks. We don't have more than a few inches to really maneuver on it. So, it's not something that we usually, well, not at all. It's not something that we leave to chance. We have surveyors that come in and they show us right where to put everything. It didn't happen. We found out. We paused the project and we approached the planning department to find out if we could get a variance.
Where you at on it?
We,
Pour the slab, have you got the building
yes,
built?
if you look at one of the photos, you'll see that the first floor framing is up and the joists are on top of that.
Is that when you realized you had a problem?
Actually, I realized it right before the joists went on, and we told the framers, because the joists were already getting delivered, we told them to set the joists to the side. There was a miscommunication on it. They set them up on top instead of just stacking them off of the road. So, but that's where the house sits today, and it sat that way, I
When
think,
you
for about
realized
3
you
to
had a
4 weeks.
problem, you stopped, right?
That's correct, sir.
So basically, you asked them for we don't have our surveyor here, somewhere around 3.6 feet.
Yeah, so we asked to reduce the rear setback to 11.6 and the south side to 6.82 from the 7.5.
That's only less than a foot, right?
Yes.
That's like just a few inches. Okay,
So, we did, so the 2 calls, was to the county to find out what we can do about a variance. The other call, we approached the HOA, and the HOA has looked at it. They gave us their approval for the variance, which I believe that should be included in your packet.
So one of the things that I'd like to point out is that there's an 18-inch cantilever on the second floor that I believe is typically allowed in Village at Blue Mountain Beach.
Yes, sir.
And so now that setback is encroached on foundation, the cantilever is actually an additional encroachment into
But
that
because the
setback.
cantilever is up above the first floor, the building code and the planning department already have that accounted
So
for.
if we say the setback is
Is-
at the 11.6
At the
foot line,
foundation.
then the cantilever would maintain an allowable 18.
Yes, yes.
pretty simple, isn't it?
Pretty straightforward.
See. Stephen?
If I could have the staff report entered into the record, please.
So entered.
Thank you. Additionally, if I could have the items, it looks like a letter, an email, and then the HOA letter as well entered into the staff report as well, or into the record, excuse me.
We're gonna do a composite. You're talking about the Blue Kings Lake Realty LLC? King Kate. And then we have 2. So we're gonna do a composite? Go ahead, Stephen, so enter.
Yeah, this does appear, based on the nature of the application, that this was, the need for the variance was created through an error in survey work and construction or some combination thereof. But the code doesn't, again, provide for that sort of hardship. So it does not meet those basic code requirements for hardship and circumstance. I know that there are folks in the audience that would like to speak in opposition to this, and I would like to mention that staff did receive a number of other questioning emails in regards to this application, though I've included the ones that are clearly in opposition.
Thank you. Did you have something supportive?
Sorry?
Did you have emails that supported it, or?
I did not. The letter from the HOA is the only supportive document that I've received.
Okay. Who's here in the audience like to speak? Comments? Are both of you gonna speak? She wants to and you don't want her to.
I want to go first.
As always. State your name for the record.
Hello, gentlemen. My name is Laurel Kushner, and I live at 248 Ventana Boulevard. And that's our full-time residence, that's our only residence, that's our retirement residence. And to be honest, we've had a lot of issues with this building going on.
How far do you live from it?
We are 10 feet to our patio.
You might have a legitimate claim.
I'd just like to point out that it does say 11.6 from the foundation to the property line.
One of the things that's,
Hang on a minute, that's gonna be
Okay.
our,
Do you have a patio in your rear setback?
hang on a minute.
well, they're a little different, so get the first ones, they're basically the patio and showing our patio. They're mostly the same. No, they're doing it.
No, you're good. We're just gonna hand them around.
Right, but it's just, yeah, you can just hand them out. Okay.
So done. Go ahead.
Okay. So when they started the construction, there was a green tape. There was no survey that we saw, no little survey stickers and flags. And there was a lot of workers making lots of measurements and scratching their heads. And to be honest, this is what I feel in our report is that, the Florida courts constantly say that, if the hardship is self-created, then why do we have to suffer for it? One of the problems that we have with this building is the drainage now. When they took the trees down, started building this really high structure, we've got this red dirt that keeps coming in our patio. And it took me like 4 hours one day just to clean it up, and I've stopped cleaning it up because it just keeps seeping in. They brought the red dirt in. And anyway, I know that's a bit emotional, but it really, it's our home, and this is where we sat in our patio and had our grandkids and our barbecues, and now we don't do that anymore. Also, I want to point out that our homeowners association, basically, from the rear was the 10-foot. And so I think they're encroaching really on our side, too, of our property. And so, we have to always do due diligence, right? When we got this report, we did not even understand what they were talking about, what variance, so we called the planning department. And we researched this. And what we found out was that, there have been other issues like this in the state of Florida. And that's what I've alluded to in the report. I don't think this is harmonious to the neighborhood because I have a 1-story, and this is going to be, a 3-4-story home. And the light now is not even what it used to be. I mean, you can't even see the top of the trees when this is done, so. Anyway, and there's a lot of neighbors that on Ventana Boulevard, which is this little tiny subdivision, is very upset. So that's really all I have to say.
Wait a minute, before you sit down.
Okay.
You're on your patio is against their backyard, which they're
Their side.
required to have a 15 on the side or on the back?
It's the side,
We're here on the north side.
On the
where
north
there's a
side.
10-foot landscape buffer between properties. So the foundation actually does not encroach into that 10-foot buffer area. So they are building
But I thought it did because it was like 3 inches off the encroachment.
It actually looks like as the foundation was built, that they increased the setback from your property by 0.15 feet.
The encroachment's on the other side,
The
right?
encroachment is on the east side.
And the backside as well, too, to the backside, which is part of our, if you see the backside also is like the 3-foot
Yeah,
encroachment.
It's not, it's going from 10 feet to, it says 11.08 and 10.15. So they have not encroached any further into the 10-foot buffer zone than
3 inches.
they're allowed to. They're,
I think.
it's greater than. But I will say that is supposed to be a 10-foot landscape buffer.
Yes.
So what is concerning to me is that if all of that vegetation is removed, the point of that area is to provide a buffer zone between the development at Village of Blue Mountain and Ventana Dunes, so you don't have the friction of
Right.
construction and the house going up.
And also the drainage issue, because I think if there's more vegetation, there's going to be less drainage problems.
I can promise you that there will be a stormwater plan that will need to be implemented. They would not have gotten a building permit if they did not have a stormwater plan provided. And at this point, it probably hasn't been
Hang
installed.
on a minute. Our technician over here has something to say, sir.
He has to talk into the mic.
Speak up, Jeff.
Okay. I will say that for them to have gotten a building permit, they would have had to address the stormwater master plan of the subdivision. And at this point, it probably hasn't been implemented, but by the time the project is finished, it will be fully functioning. So I don't anticipate that being a long-term problem, but
But we know that for a fact that that would happen, or that they'd have to have that?
I would continue to be vigilant on your end to make sure that as the property finishes, that the landscape buffer is replanted and that the stormwater master plan is followed properly.
I tell you what, just stay where you are. Come up, Mr. Buchanan. Do you have a stormwater plan?
The village has a stormwater plan.
Do you have one for this house?
That house falls underneath the village stormwater plan. So the water is designed to slope down to the street. Actually, that particular one is designed to run down the hill because there's a street and then this house and then another house. So it's actually designed to run down across the property behind us.
It looks
to the
like
next
in the
street.
photos that there's a mound. With
Right.
The floor's been built
Running
up
down
on the
his
stem
yard.
wall, and there's some filter.
There is, and there was, so there is if you look in the photos, there is a silt fence that runs up there because we always, we try to protect the neighbor stuff. There is one of the problems that we had in this particular situation. There was development on this property when the owner bought it,
Right, when I bought that, it had trees in it, it had lighting and that kind of thing. I took the lighting off for the builders, so they didn't have to do that. And the sprinkler system, there was a sprinkler system that, when we bought it, it was the owner of our property also owned that lot, and that's what they did. Okay, so when that happened, we talked to the builder. But I have to tell you, we pleaded and pleaded with you for that fence. And all that stuff keeps coming in no matter what you put up. That fence that you've put up doesn't help.
Yeah, I think probably a dune sand fence supported by 2x4 and some additional silt fence.
There is a 6-foot fence currently being built between the two subdivisions.
But that's not
And
going
that
to
is-
happen for a long time.
It's under construction according to I have no problem building something there.
What we want to do is this, we want to try to make sure these people are happy with you as a builder next door. Now, it's our understanding you have to have a stormwater plan to make sure the water doesn't go on their property. And I think that needs to be implemented ASAP. Now, if it's designed to flow to the road or to the back, I think you would make a good neighbor happy if you can make sure that water goes on there and not go on their property.
We're happy to do that. Part of the reason we did not disturb that side was she had some palm trees and some other stuff there, and she had requested that we not tear up that side and to leave it. So for us to implement, and I'm in agreement, normally we would go in there, but for us to implement that, we would have to take out the trees and the items that she requested.
Did y'all own the lot that you sold? Did y'all
We
own?
didn't own the lot.
You just put trees over there on
No,
it?
we didn't put the trees there. The previous owner who owned our house also owned the lot that they're
Okay.
building on. They put those trees on. They were there when we bought it.
Okay.
Had already
It
removed
already
the
there.
10-foot landscape
It
buffer.
had the presentation of the side of Mr. Kurt's lot was actually the backyard of their lot.
Okay, the request on the variance does not affect their side, is that correct?
But the back does a bit. But
No, if we did it, we'd have to actually move closer to your house. We actually moved farther away from your
oh,
house.
that's good.
Is what,
It's
we
just
didn't do
this
it on
tiny little
purpose.
lot.
We didn't do it on purpose, I promise you that, but it did end up moving it farther away from
Right.
your house.
I
would-
think you have a good builder here that's tried to work within the framework. Well, he's never been before us before, and we never heard anything bad about him. So, and we understand your concern, but we want you to leave here happy at whatever decision we make.
I think the main thing, don't you agree? He needs to speak, he's getting antsy, but I think the main thing is the drainage to make sure that
But what I was
whatever
trying to
they
get
can do.
around to say is this: I think you have testimony on record that he would do what he can do to make sure the drainage will drain.
Okay,
But now, are you the one that told him not to mess with the palm trees?
I said, please don't cut them down because they're beautiful. I said, when
Hey,
they
but now,
start building, don't.
do you want a drainage problem, or you want the palm trees? Because you
Where are
probably
they
gonna have to
gonna,
make a choice.
where are they gonna build, are they gonna put plants and stuff in there or not? I mean, if it's a drainage thing, then it's
You
just
gotta have water
bare.
flow, you gotta have water flow,
But then it's just gonna be bare.
you gotta have water flow. You can have water flow with an elevation change, you can have water flow, you can have vegetation in it. But-
Okay.
And to have water flow to change the ground level, you may have to take the palm trees out to have water flow. You can't have it
looks
all.
like, to me, in the picture, that there is red clay flowing from that site into there,
It is,
which is
It
not
is.
allowed in the land development.
right.
Some changes are gonna need to be made with the grading and drainage when this property is finished, where their swale does not dump the water onto your lot.
Right,
That's-
because it's going this way instead of that way.
But you're
that's-
gonna have to get rid of the trees.
That will
most likely.
probably kill the palm trees
When they do that anyway. Right.
but I don't think anybody wants to have a side yard where there's total lack of privacy, so they're probably gonna put back something.
But what, the house is like, what, 4 stories? So,
Yeah. I mean, there's no other way.
Let's go ahead and say, come on, you go ahead.
Thank you. And I'll try to keep it short. The problem has already gone to an extent of the red dirt or clay flowing on the sides of this house over to the next house on the north side in there and onto their patio. So it's already started, and yeah, without a plan or something to mitigate the flooding, and I do mean that, it's going to be a real problem. And secondly, since they've built this house so close to us, yes, if there's any airspace that we have a right to, it's going to be taken away by going up wherever they're going to go up.
You
2 or 3
understand that the
stories.
house that they built, it does not encroach on your setback. You understand that?
Yes,
They
I
built-
understand it.
They built within their rights on their property that they bought. You understand that?
Yes.
And they allowed to do that under the code. You
Right.
understand that?
Now, my question would be to you or to anybody else, is if you allow it at the base to be in far enough, what happens when they come up and build it out? Because really, that looks like their plan. The side of the house is now going to come up a little farther. The lot is so small and the structure is so small from looking at it.
I don't think that what they're building is outside of what they're allowed to build, other than it's placed incorrectly on the lot. So the height and the cantilevers and the footprint of the structure, they're all allowable under the approved plans for that subdivision.
Oh,
So
okay.
I know you're objecting to the height of the structure, but given the size of the lot and the height limit in there, almost all of the houses in there are very tall and skinny with the 18-inch. So I don't think we want to talk about the houses in that subdivision. I don't find to be very attractive, but that they are allowable. So they're building within what they're allowed to build. So
Well,
I understand your concern about the drainage and everything else, and you're objecting to a variance being granted to the placement of the house. But even if we said tear it down and put it correctly on the footprint, it would not benefit you at all. In fact, it would actually move the house closer to you, and they would still have to put in drainage and everything else. So I think that you being here, hopefully you can connect with him so that you can put up a proper silt fence and
We're
any-
going to address that if we ever get to it. Do you have anything else to add to it that hasn't been
yeah,
added yet?
thank you. Yeah, oh, and my only comment is I agree with this gentleman, and yeah, unfortunately, I understand, I'm reflecting on the owner building this property where the lot is just too small, too steep. And then you're left with, what am I going to do? And cost him a lot of money, yes, to get rid of the foundation or even replace it would be just tremendous. My only suggestion, and after practicing accounting for 45 years, is that I once had a client who had a similar problem. And he solved the problem by donating the property to a Walton County or a nonprofit organization. And that way, over a period of time, he could probably, I'm not doing his taxes, but he could probably recoup his costs or get it that way.
you could always buy the property from him.
Look, it's 8 o'clock. I've been here since 5. We appreciate it. You have anything else to add? If not, I'd like for to move on.
Well, first of all, I'd like you to make evident that, yes, we have numerous people who have objected to.
We got it noted. We're going to take care of it. Have a seat, sir.
Okay.
Thank
well,
you.
All I was going to say was they couldn't be here, but we can bring them
Very good.
later time. Thank you.
Mr. Buchanan? Hang on a minute. What is it, Stephen?
If the board wishes, I was just going to clarify a little bit of the stormwater requirements as far as the plan is concerned. If not, I'll sit down.
Yeah, I don't want this to be about the stormwater. I know it'll be compliant when it's finished.
I'm assuming that's the case.
We're gonna deal with that if y'all just let us. You got the owner here. Does he want to say something? State your name for the record.
My name's Kurt Bookert. I just wanted to add that.
Kurt what? Booker?
Bookert? Yes, sir. I just wanted to add, this is the first time I'm seeing this letter from the Kushners, and I really do want to be a good neighbor. The only complaint I've heard from them before was about the dirt, and I immediately asked the builder to put up some type of fence or something. Obviously, we're going to have to do something more. But, I mean, I'm willing to put something in writing that, I like the palm trees. I don't want to get rid of the palm trees. I love trees. And we're willing to do anything we can to make it right on the drainage. And that, like they said earlier, we're actually a little bit farther from you than we're supposed to go. And I'm only going up 2 stories. I actually could have gone up 4 stories, but I agree with you. I think that looks obnoxious. So this is only a 2-story house, and it's just a tiny lot. The buildable footprint's only like 350 square feet, so we're doing 2 stories. So it's only like a 740 square foot house, where the house across the street that's being built right now is like 4 stories, and it looks kind of crazy to me. And I just didn't want to do that. But I'm willing to work with them as much as possible on anything. I want to be a good
You don't
neighbor.
have no problem whatsoever if we grant this variance, that we put in that variance, that you got to meet the Walton County drainage plan to keep the clay off the neighbors, and you're gonna build a fence and make these people happy, right?
Yes,
You
sir.
agree with it? Okay, good. Have a seat. Come up there. You got something else you want to add?
No, sir, I think that's it.
You still nervous? You need to relax. Made it through you made it
I
through.
think I'm getting a little hungry too, so.
You're a little
I'm sure
hungry.
you all
Oh,
are.
my goodness. Motion to close the public discussion.
Motion to close public discussion.
Second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the foundation as presented in the survey for an 11.11 foot rear setback.
You gotta do both of them though, right?
Well, that's the most egregious.
They got two, do they
Of the
not?
side setback, and the side setback to 6.82 feet.
Yeah.
Survey attached.
Survey, yes, please.
But will you please address the drainage in it?
I don't believe that that is relevant. They have to comply with the stormwater master plan.
Will it hurt to put it in it?
It would not hurt to put it in.
Will it make the neighbors feel better?
The variance is contingent on satisfying all of the requirements of the neighborhood stormwater.
Let's see, that wasn't bad. Second. Discussion?
I feel given the friction between the properties, that tearing it down and starting over in the correct footprint is only gonna prolong the agony of the adjacent homeowners.
I get a lot worse.
It's gonna make it a lot worse, and at this point, I think it's in everybody's best interest for them to hurry up and finish the house, and the setback violation is almost secondary to all of the construction issues, so hopefully they can work through those and get this over with quickly.
I think a lot of it had to do with neighbors not talking to neighbors, explaining what's going on. Unfortunately, that's the way life is going this day and time. That's why we have our gates separated. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? You got your variance. We do appreciate you. Are y'all happy? You're not happy? Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, aye?
Aye. I don't understand why they would object to the placement of the foundation. It's farther away from their lot than what we.
They don't care where it's at. They will,
As long as they get in